Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talking Business with me, Danny Pardo. On this episode, I'm chatting with Terrell Lloyd, the lead photographer for my favourite American football team, the San Francisco 49ers. So this is quite exciting for me to be able to talk 49er football with an employee of the organisation, but also get stuck into Terrell's craft and passion for it as well. So without further ado, let's talk business with Terrell. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talking Business. You can see we've got a 49ers themed episode here today, and we're talking photography and business with Mr. Terrell Lloyd. Hello, Terrell. How are you doing today?
Oh, Danny, how you doing? Thanks for having me here. Excited to speak to you, share some of my experiences and my history with the team, and really how I got to where I'm at today.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing your career journey. I've heard snippets and bits and pieces from other YouTube videos, but it's going to be fun to break that down as we go through today. So for people who don't know, who is Terrell?
Big
question.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, because, my background, I took photography in school, when I was a teenager and stuff like that. And then, my mother always had cameras when I was younger, right? And so it's so ironic because my story really ties into really how I got to where I'm at today. And I always say I've come full circle because, growing up as a kid in San Francisco, I'm a little older, but I look younger, right? But I go back to going to games when I was a little kid at Kezar Stadium where the 49ers played back then.
Wow.
And back in the day, I used to have a paper route and I used to throw papers. So but I always had a love for football, always. And I would, and so on Mondays, I would cut out pictures from the newspapers, right, from the Sunday's game, and I would make my own 49er books, right? Wow. So how ironic is that from, 12, 13 years old, and then now I run all the photography for the 49ers today. And so that's
amazing. Yeah, I mean, so you're talking Kezar Stadium, then. So you're talking late 60s, early 70s at that point, then.
Yes, yeah, correct.
Right. And now we're 2021, and you are in charge of all the photography for 49ers. It's a bit more than just cutting out pictures and making your own books now, then.
Right, correctly. So it's like the way, and way photography has evolved from when I first started and got on the field. And like I was a season ticket holder in 1981. Mm-hmm. I started taking pictures from the stands, right? I'm working my corporate job, started a little photography business doing weddings and corporate events. And then, one of the former players actually got me a credential to be on the field, right? In 1994. And so my section of the stands was like 10 rows from the field. And we were like a tight knit group because I was going to games since 1980s, right? When they won, started winning all those Super Bowls. And so in 94, it's like I got on the field for a Tampa Bay game, right? And I got down there and I was taking some pictures and I was like, wow, this is like, you get a shot in the arm. It's like, you got a love for football, right? Now you're down there, taking photos. And I just said to myself, man, God, it'd be great to get back down here to shoot or later on get with the 49ers. I mean, that was just a pipe dream. I mean, I wasn't, I hadn't shot sports since high school, and I'm just doing weddings and corporate events, stuff like that. So funny story, the PR director, I thanked him at the end of the game. And he told me, he says, well, give me a call next time I can see what I could do. And I didn't ask him. He offered that. And I'm like, wow, okay, well, the next week I would call him. Well, he would say the same thing every week. And I would call him every week, right? And so I didn't want to be annoying, but they had just won the division, made the playoffs, right? Getting ready to make their run on their 5th Super Bowl. And I called him up like I knew him. I said, hello, this is Terrell. He says, sorry, doesn't have anything. And he hung up the phone on me. And I was like, ooh, now, okay, maybe I was a little bit too aggressive all year, right? So then I thought about it. I said, well, what is my best way to get on the field? I got a regular job. I'm not going to get a job with the newspapers, right? I got on with a monthly magazine that would publish, I told the editor, I said, hey, I want to get on the field. I want to be able to get credentials. And then that's how I got my start. That's how I got on the field in 95. To start covering the games. And the Raiders moved back to Oakland and I was covering a game every Sunday. Yeah. And that's how I got my start. And there was a guy that was doing the entertainment stuff like halftime shows, check presentations, some of the cheerleaders photos. And I had been shooting for like maybe less than a year and something, right? And he came up to me and says, Terrell, hey, how would you like to do, what I'm doing? Right. His name was Doug. He says, well, my knees are getting kind of bad. I'm getting kind of old. come down to my office and I'll talk to you, right? So he told me all he did. But then I asked him one question. I said, Doug, why me? I've only been out here a year and something shooting. And he says, you know what, Terrell, you come in here, you say hello to everybody, you're pleasant, you come with a smile, I figured you'd be good for the job. And this man did not see one picture that I had taken prior to that. He saw my personality more so. And I kind of stress that when I do my speaking and stuff like that. I mean, we all take pictures, but you want to be able to work with the photographer. You want to be friendly. You got to be engaging. You got to be, pleasant, when you're doing certain things. You got to know when to come in, when not to. I mean, there's a lot of variables other than just clicking the shutter per se. Yeah, and that's how I got my start in the early times.
That's absolutely fascinating. I mean, you see some photographers on television in reality shows and things like that, and they can be harsh and they can be critical and you think really overbearing. But that's a TV reality show. They've got to get viewers in. There has to be something to get people watching. But in the real world of photography, you've got to be the kind of person that people actually want to be photographed by you. They actually think, yeah, I actually want to hang out with Terrell. I want him to take my picture. Because then you've got to, you've still got to get the results, haven't you? You've still got to portray the image of that player, that team, that brand.
And all
and
through
your
my
personality helps that.
All through my photography too, and even outside the sports, it was like, when I was doing corporate photography and I was, had my job and I'm out there doing, high-end corporate events and I'm with, presidents of companies, CEOs, directors, and it's like, you have to know how to handle yourself and what you're doing. I mean, there was one story, I was at a corporate event doing some pictures of some lawyers, right? And his assistant said, well, Terrell, he doesn't really like taking pictures, so we got to be quick and so on and so forth, right? So I said, no worry, I got this. I'm good, right? And so, you come up, you're professional, right? You come up, I got this thing on my camera and so on and so forth. So it was intriguing. And he was like, hey, what's that on your camera? So it struck up a conversation and we started talking and I relaxed him. And then we spent more time taking photos. And she came up to me later on. She says, Terrell, he has never done that before. I really appreciate how, you handled it and so on and so forth, the way you talk to him. And it's like, I really appreciated how you work. And that's my trait and what I do.
And do you feel like sometimes you've changed your personality to suit different clients? Or are you just Terrell, or are there just like little tweaks where, well, I've got to act different at a wedding than if I'm at a game, than if I'm at a corporate event, than if I'm at a rock concert or something?
Just a little bit, not too much. I mean, it's like you want to be true to yourself. It's like, to me, I tell people, like, you got to be consistent, right? It's like, if I'm a good person and I'm a pleasant person and I'm a calming person, I'm always going to be the same way. Now, there's certain times that, you got to hold your, like, say, emotions when things don't go your way or you're not really getting what you want. Sometimes you got to catch yourself a little bit. I mean, I've not to say I'm perfect. I've lost it a little bit, not in a crazy way, right? But one time I said something one time and I didn't know the person was listening, but it wasn't crazy bad, but it was like, oh, and then they did hear me and I'm like, okay, I gotta, you gotta think about what you're gonna do before you say it, how you do it, and how you react. So it's like, yeah.
So, I mean, was one of the questions from the students, because the students sent in some great questions. Have you always wanted to be a sports photographer? And I think you've answered that, quite well. But I mean, was that, did you actually think that one day, was that the end goal, that I am going to be a sports photographer? Or was it just, I really like taking photos, I can make a living doing it, and if I end up on the field, great stuff?
Well, it's interesting because it's like I had a certain career path, right? I love photography. I took it in school. And I used to be, you could always find me in the dark room back in the film days, right, at school. And I was on the yearbook committee and I was doing sports. And then, but my first career, have you ever seen like bowling on TV?
Yes.
Yes. So I was actually one of the top youth bowlers growing up in San Francisco as a teenager as well. And so my aspiration was to become a professional bowler, right? So I was pursuing that career. And then unfortunately I got sick at 19, 20 years old and recovered from that, but I was still able to go out on the Pro Bowlers Tour. So I was a professional bowler on my first career, right? But, after my surgery and things like that, after 3 years on tour, it was just tough, right? I was good, but the guys were better, right? And after that stint, it was kind of like hard. I got rings for perfect games and stuff like that, right? So then while I was going to school during that time, I was taking computer science classes because I always had a passion about computers in the early days, right? And so when I came off a tour, one a friend of mine was working at a company in Silicon Valley and said, hey, we're hiring in our computer department. I said, well, when I was in school, I was taking computer science classes and so on and so forth, right? And so I went down for the interview, and I'm maybe 23 years old, 24 years old, and ended up getting the job. And I worked for that company for 20 years in their IT department, right? And I did, I worked in IT, I did networking, I did project management, I did a few things within that 20-year span. But while I worked in the company, I was still bowling part-time. But while I was working in the company, somebody was getting married, and I picked up my camera again. And then that's when the love came back, right? Mm-hmm. And so I joined this photography group, and they were serious photographers and doing weddings and portraits, and anything that I said I was going to do, I was going to be good at, right? And so I joined the group. I mentored under the gentleman in weddings photography, right? And then that's when I was able to get on the field later on. And then that's when I said, and I started a small business, right? And so then that's when the photography came back, and I'm like, after about 18 years of working, maybe I could do this full time, right? And then that's where the path started going after that. And then it was like, then it was the thing of, how do I get with the 49ers? Because now I got with the 49ers directly in 1996, right? So I've been here 25 years, right? And now I'm working my way, right? And so then as time went on, as film transitions into digital, and then the digital revolution, that's what really got me in the door. And so then it was like, how do I become full-time, right? Because a lot of teams didn't hire full-time photographers. And then as things started changing, and our ownership decided to do a new stadium, I said, that's it. And I went into the president's office and I sat with him for 30 minutes and said, hey, here's why I should be full-time. He said, oh, Terrell, it's a no-brainer. I love your work. We love what you do. We're going to build this stadium. It's going to be high tech and so on and so forth. And then I've been full-time for 8 years since then. And I'm 25 years here.
What a story. I mean, to think that if you had to combine the life's worth of a photographer, very rarely, I don't think you'd say, oh yeah, bowling and computer science and then photography. That link is really unique. But it goes to show, doesn't it, career paths and these opportunities. A wedding that happened to be in the place where you happen to work and you happen to be free that weekend, and that's what can lead to it. And that's just stunning to hear that kind of journey that you've been on there. There's another question as well, and this was from a student. Now, I don't know if it was directed at me, because I'm always going on about American football, or if it's directed at you, but I'm going to pass it to you. So why football? What's the love with football then, compared to, because obviously in the Bay Area, you've got a wide choice of sports that you can kind of latch on to. But why football?
Well, I think back when I told you earlier, like when I was a kid going to games, and that's why football, because if I'm cutting, I played a little baseball before, basketball, in school, and bowling was my thing, but football was the one that I loved. And then when you think about it, if as a kid and I'm cutting out pictures, not thinking I'm gonna be a photographer of just football, games, it's like it kind of fits. So that's where I remember one time the 49ers back in the day had a playoff game in Kezar, and I'm a little kid walking around the parking lot, trying to see if I can get a ticket or something like that, and didn't have no money for a ticket. I'm a little kid running around, and a gentleman offered me and another kid 2 tickets to the game, right? And one of the other kid he was gonna go sell his ticket, right? Me, no, I'm going into the game. So I went into the game. So I think from a young child, I think that's what really drew me into like being where I'm at today. Now, I also do photography at San Jose State University. So I do all their athletic programs. And, it enables me to go outside of football and do baseball, soccer, basketball, swimming, tennis, water polo, gymnastics, right? And really to hone my skills as a sports photographer and not just really a football photographer, right? So I've been doing photography at San Jose State for almost 15 years now, 16 years.
Yeah. So I mean, in terms of sports photography then, because another one of our students said, have you ever thought of photographing British football or soccer? And obviously you've got the San Jose, the Earthquakes, isn't it? Close to you there. What's the differences then between shooting, say, a football game and a soccer game? And are you noticing the flow of the game? Because obviously, football, American football to English people has got the stopping and the starting. You can readjust, you can move around, whereas soccer is constantly flowing. Is there a kind of a different feel to photographing that?
Well, it's funny because I tried to get the job before I was full time with the Niners, so try to get like the contract job for the San Jose Earthquakes, right? And I didn't end up getting it. And it was like weird. It was like, okay, well, it's all good. I'm doing my 49er thing anyway. But we here at Levi Stadium, we hosted a lot of, international soccer matches here, right? Which was great. And the thing is that the thing about soccer, and it's so, like you say, constantly moving for 45 minutes or plus, and so on and so forth. And you have to have that keen eye. And I think it's like, I mean, I love all sports, but it's kind of like, it's always like a challenge too. It's like, how am I going to be good at shooting this international soccer, and and how fast the game is, and the ball is moving left, right, up, down, trying to really, how do you tell that story? And one thing that we do in photography is like, how do you tell a story of a game or a match or soccer? And it's more to it just than just getting guys running up and down the field, right, in a soccer game, or kicking the ball, or wrestling with a player trying to, like, get the ball, the other guy's trying to get it, go back the other way, or trying to get that reaction on their faces, right? Or and I say the money shot too sometimes on say a soccer game is like, either you get the guy that's kicking to get a goal, right, score a goal, and then the celebration, right? Is it on your side? Can you get a good shot of it? Or are you getting a diving catch of the goalie, blocking a goal coming in, or is it a shootout? So it's like those things. So your mind kind of has to always keep thinking, right? And then you got to have the right equipment too when you're on a soccer field. And it's like, and because it goes further away down the field, you got to come back. Maybe you move a little bit, change your angle a little bit. Because I never like to sit in one spot. Because if you sit in one spot, all the images are going to look the same. But if you move over to the left, or if you can move to the right, or somewhere around there, change your perspective a little bit and try to figure out what's the best angle and stuff. But I mean, I just love, American football, but then again, I love shooting soccer as well, though. I mean, especially the international soccer, because it's just so intense too.
Yeah, and it's a different game in so many aspects. I mean, obviously that's an obvious statement there, right. But in terms of the artistry that you're trying to convey as a photographer or a videographer, you're obviously going to find different things and different emotions and different passions. With football, getting the American football, getting the headshots and the reactions isn't always as easy because of the uniform and the padding. Whereas in soccer, that's a lot easier, and you can really kind of bring that emotion through, can't you? In what you're photographing. And you said about the money shot there in terms of soccer. Yeah. What's the money shot in American football? If you have to say, right, I need to get this shot, this game, what is that money shot?
Well, it can vary too. I mean, like say, for example, and I'll give you an example, when we were in the 2012 Super Bowl in New Orleans, right? And we were down and we came back, lights went out, and then all of a sudden we made a comeback, right? And there's about less than 3 minutes left in the game. And now we're at 1st and 7 at the goal line with like less than 2 minutes, a little over 2 minutes to go. Right. And now you're thinking, it's like I got a crew of photographers as well, but I'm on like our bench side. I got a couple of photographers on the opposite side. And your thing is, it's like, okay, now you're at the Super Bowl. You want to get that winning catch or touchdown at the Super Bowl, because that's really the defining moment on a big game like that. Right. And so we get down to the 5-yard line. And then there was 3 passes. I don't know if you remember that Super Bowl, and it was 3 passes.
Yeah.
To.
I don't know why you had to bring it up. I mean, you can blame me for this question. Couldn't you have thought of another example? I mean, go on, keep going. Go on.
Well, it still hurts me to this day because. Yeah. Anyway, so now my thing is my heart's pounding. Right. I'm checking the settings on the camera because you want to make sure that you didn't actually hit the dial and have a wrong setting and it don't get the picture right. And the play comes in front of me 3 times in a row, right? And the last one where Crabtree missed the catch, it was like his fingertips was here and he misses the catch like by this much. I still believe they should have thrown a penalty because they held him. But anyway, right? That would have been like the money catch, of course, in a Super Bowl, right? In a normal game, right? And I told somebody this the other day. It's like, it's always not like that diving fingertip catch or a touchdown in the game. It could be the winning touchdown, or it could be that celebration, right? The moment that happens after the play. What tells that story of the game, right? And so that could be your money shot. I mean, you can get a player diving in the end zone, running in the end zone for a touchdown. It's just, great play, great catch, or great thing, to take the lead or something like that. But what happens after that? Is it the quarterback, pumping his fist, or the coach on the sideline putting his hands up, in the air? That could be the story, right? Because you see hundreds and thousands of touchdown pictures. You see hundreds of, thousands of catches. But, if somebody's writing an article on the coach or the quarterback or a defining moment, that could be your money shot right there. So I said I just tell in my classes, I say, or my presentations, I say, for every action, there's a reaction, right? And so that reactions tells those stories. Like I did one the other day, and I had a picture I showed of one of our linemen recovered a fumble. Right now, the fumble happens. You got the tussle and everybody's down there. That's not the photo, right? Because you got a pile of guys. But the guy gets up with the ball in his hand, right? Let's see, you can see in his hand, and his expression on his face as he's running to the sideline. That's the story. That's like, your money shot, because that could have been the fumble that saved the game, things like that. I know. Yeah. So, those are some of the things that I look at too. So it's not always just the touchdown as well.
Yeah. And that's, I'm thinking back in my head as you're saying that, and I'm thinking of like iconic 49ers images in my head, and I can see Montana with his arms in the air. I can see Steve Young hugging a Super Bowl trophy. I can see Vernon Davis in tears, hugging Harbaugh on the sideline. You think, oh yeah, that's not the moment where it crosses or the scoreboard or even the element of the game. It's the emotion of that player that was involved in that moment. And that's quite interesting for me to reflect on that as well, and go back through some of the archives and have a look.
Well, because it's funny, because the thing is, it's like I tell people I'm like a thoroughbred racehorse, right? I'm like this, and I'm looking. I don't never take a play off, right? I don't never take a time off, because I'm always looking, even if it's during a timeout, right? Or it's a moment where one of our photographers, his name is Michael Sagaris, he's been with the team 47 years. I mean, back to the Kezar days and so on and so forth. And he has this iconic image of Bill Walsh and Joe Montana, right? Kneeling down in the NFC Championship game against Dallas. And, Joe is playing in the grass, or not playing in the grass, but like writing something in the grass. And it's just, that was the story of that drive and that moment when the Niners went on to win their first Super Bowl, right? So despite whatever happened, you got the catch, of course. You have the catch, of course, right? But there's certain pictures in between that kind of like defines it.
Yeah, it's that looking up shot, isn't it? I remember reading about that, and he had to lie down on his stomach to get the shot, and the clouds are all ominous in that black and white image. And at the time, it's a photo. It's like, oh, I got a cool photo there. But over time, that image has evolved into so much meaning, hasn't it? And such a turning point for so many people. Hundreds of thousands of people in the Bay Area. That image signifies so much. And at the time, it's just, who's that photographer lying down to try and take a photo? It's and you're kind of.
And for myself, it's when you're following somebody, and Sagaris is still with the team too as well, but it's a different era, different time, right? But when you're following somebody like that, and all those 5 Super Bowls and those defining pictures that he had with Bill Walsh, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Steve Young, Roger Craig, I mean, all those guys back there, Ronnie Lott, right? Keena Turner. I mean, when you look at that, it's kind of like, wow, I mean, I got to follow behind that and create my own defining moment that really hasn't happened. Or will it happen? Right? I've been to 2 Super Bowls with him. We lost both, right? And so
you can stop mentioning them now, by the way, if you want to. You can talk about some playoff games or something. We do well in them.
I know that's true, but people think like, well, you've been with the team, you do all the Super Bowls. Like, yeah, but I wasn't there during the first one, but but and like, I'm still trying to get, what's going to be my defining moment with this team and stuff like that. And you never know. It comes, just organically per se.
Yeah. And a lot of those defining moments are with Candlestick, aren't they? And Levi's has had various public opinions about it. And again, it's got its couple of moments, but it hasn't got the moments that 20, 30, 40 years in one place will obviously generate. And, maybe you'll be part of that as we kind of go through that. And you spoke there about, that zone. You said you're like a racehorse and nothing else exists. And I know the zone a little bit. I've done a lot of music photography, and you would have 15 minutes, 3 songs to shoot the artist, and everything else would disappear, and the lights would go down, and the band would come on, and that was all that mattered. And that was 15 minutes, and I used to find that exhausting, massively exhilarating. So I mean, what is the zone for you then, and how on earth do you last for that long? Because a football game, for those who don't know, 60 minutes. It lasts a lot longer than that, and obviously you've got the whole game day, the pre-game, the post-game. How are you doing that in terms of your energy levels and staying locked in for that long?
Oh, you know, it's interesting because I have a lot of energy, and I don't know where it comes from, and maybe because it's adrenaline or like I say, the love for the game, right? Because it's like I just keep going, right? And I've been doing it a long time, and it's like it never it never really stops, that energy level, right? So I get here early. I get here very early. Game's at 1 o'clock our time. I may be here by 7:30, right? And so getting preparation, getting stuff together for my crew of photographers that come in, and the game starts at 1, and then I may not leave here till 7, 8 o'clock at night. That's 12 hours of nonstop going, right? I don't even eat at halftime. I still go up and I'll eat breakfast, right? Get some energy, get some things going, and then I'll eat afterwards. But I've been doing that constantly for year after year after year. Here's an interesting stat. When I finally got with the Niners, I started traveling with them full time. And I started traveling full time like maybe after my second year with them, right? I haven't missed a game. I missed one game in 23 years on the road or at home with the 49ers, right? And
That's
so
a stat.
right. And I think I just when you love something that you do, you don't get tired. Now, when I get home, I'm exhausted, right? But yet during the time your adrenaline is taken in, the moments of the game, regardless if it's just a regular game or if it's a playoff game or Super Bowl where the intensity goes up, then your intensity goes up, right? But then at the end of the day, you're like, whew, I'm exhausted. I get back up in the morning and go. There's been times when I've traveled international trips, right? There was one time I went to Argentina to do a big corporate event. I did a game on Sunday, right? Flew out on Monday, got there Tuesday, right? Worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I had another assistant photographer that went to start the event, right? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Left on Friday, half day, flew back, got back Saturday, got home, changed. I did a San Jose State football game that early afternoon on Saturday afternoon, changed again, drove to San Francisco, 40 miles north, did a 49er event that night and a 49er game Sunday, all in 1 week's time.
Wow.
Yeah. I just,
Wow.
Yeah.
You've got an energy reserve in there somewhere then. But,
Yes.
like you said, if you're loving it, which
Yes.
you obviously are, then you can find that energy, you can find that zone, you can find that passion and just draw it out and just keep rolling with it.
And even preparing for the game, you're sitting there and it's like, it's like, what is like a game day like where, once the game gets ready to start, like you said, you got 15 minutes to shoot. Oops, is that my speaker? No. Or you got 15 minutes to shoot a concert, right? And the 3 songs. It's like, now you're getting ready to start the game. You map out what you're going to do, what position you're going to be. Are we kicking off? Or are we receiving? Right? What do I want to shoot first, or what do I want to shoot second? And my photographers know, because I have them in different positions on the field, right? And it's almost like a chessboard to me, right? Where it's like they know they're not supposed to be close to me and not supposed to be close to each other because you want to get different angles, right? So, but the one thing that factors in, if I move, that means you're going to move somewhere else, right? So if I'm on one side of the end zone and say you're on the right side of the end zone and I want your spot for whatever reason, right? And I come over that way, your object is to get here and take my spot on the other side, right? There's like no questions like, what are you doing over here? Or I'm going to stay right here. It's kind of like, when you're I don't want to say captain of it, but it's like you're the masterpiece that's moving around. And so most of my photographers may only shoot with 2 cameras, right? I shoot with 5 cameras and during the game. And people say, how do you shoot with 5 cameras? I got a 600 millimeter, I got a 400 millimeter, I got a 300, I got a a 70 to 200 hanging on one side with a 24 to 70 over here, right? And so I'm shooting a lot of different things. I may be shooting 5 times to your one, not images, but looking at different things before you even start your first shot because of my thought process. So it's like I say, then I got to understand the tendencies of the game, just like we were talking about soccer, right? You want to understand the tendencies of what they're doing, right? Who they're getting the ball to most of the time, who are their scorers, right? Things like that. So the same thing applies here, where what are we going to do? Are we running the ball? Or we're throwing the ball? Do you got just a fullback in, or you got 4 wide receivers in, or do you got 2 tight ends set? Is it first and 10? Are you going to go? I mean, it's like even when we're inside the red zone, it's a matter of if they come to my side and don't score once, right? Then they try to come to my side again and don't score. 9 times out of 10, they're going the other way, of course, right? And it's like, oh man. So it's like things like that. So you just have to be ready and in tune.
Yeah. What's the difference then between shooting in different places? I mean, we can look at it on television and all the stadiums look, they've obviously got their different quirks and things, but the main field looks pretty generic and the lights are always on and it always looks cool. But in terms of the differences between, say, Candlestick and Levi's, and then I guess, every other stadium, are you then having to plan for different things, or is it all pretty much, no, I know what we're doing, we're in a football stadium, there's a football game going on, or is there a lot of other external factors that you've got to consider?
Oh yeah, lighting is a key, right? It's funny, Candlestick light, it was beautiful. I mean, it was like, you get the sun coming in a certain direction, right? And so like, say if I'm in the south end zone, the sun is almost over my left shoulder, right? So you got that great direction of light coming into the helmet. And I mean, pristine colors with the red and the gold and the other, it's like, it was great. Now you go back to the other side where now the lighting changes, right? But we used to have this like little haze that come across, and then with the fog a little bit, depending on the fog coming in. But then like someone mentioned to me the other day, like the smoke from like the barbecues, you'd be outside, right? And then you get this kind of somewhat backlit kind of image, but yet the way the sun is shining off the helmet, it was like just a beautiful light, right? If you looked at some of and I should show that one day or send you some for your students, right? I'm gonna show you. Yeah, I'll send some, and so you can show your students like this is what he was talking about with the light at Candlestick, right? And then I'll show you images at Levi Stadium, right? So now, even though we moved, from San Francisco 40 miles south, right? And you build a stadium, whatever it is, that direction of light is different based on where the stadium is positioned, right? But now at Levi's here, we have a big tower structure, right? And when the sun gets ready to set, it creates a shadow over the field, right? But the lighting here, even though it's 1 o'clock, same time of the year, it's a lot more contrast, right? So then you have to make different adjustments for different lighting situations, right? So it's definitely 2 different lighting scenarios. So now imagine you go around the league, right? And on the outdoor stadiums, it's like you got different lighting situations here. And what I did myself when I learned to do weddings and portraits is, understand direction of light, right? It's like, where is the direction of light coming from to put you in a position on the field to get that nice lighting image of a player. Now, sometimes you got to shoot in bad light, but then you got to know how to make adjustments as well, right? So if you could say, well, I'm going to sit here because I like where the lights come from here. I like where it's coming on their faces like doing here, right? And I'm going to get some great shots. Now you have to sit somewhere else and the lighting is tough. Give you one example. So remember I told you we got a big tower side, right? That creates a shadow coming across the field. So now you have half the field that's in shade and half the field that's in bright sun, right? So my philosophy, where are you going to shoot? So if you shoot from the shadow side, how are you going to meter from the shadow area with a strong backlit of the sun, and that's going to go bright and it's going to look ugly in the back of the picture, and you got to not overexpose, but meter for the shaded area, right? But if you take yourself and move yourself over to the sunny side of the field, right? Now you're shooting from the sun into the shaded area, right? So then you say, well, how do you do that if I'm shooting manual or aperture priority, because it's going to change when you go over here, right? So I shoot aperture priority, I shoot manual, all depends on light, right? If it's overcast day, even lighting, I'm going to shoot manual, meter for what I have. So if I'm over here on the sunny side shooting into the shade side, and if I'm at shooting at 3.5, 3.2, 2.8, whatever, at 200 ISO, and I'm at like say 3,000 of a second, right, or more, then I say, okay, well, if I pan over to the shady side, now I'm only at 500ths of a second, right? And now my shutter speed is slowing down, and it's like, well, I can shoot at 500, but then you still don't want that motion, you still don't want anything like that. So I'll up my ISO to 400 ISO, right? Now I may be shooting at like 6,000ths of a second, but if I pan over to the shady side, I'm at 2,000ths of a second. So what happens is, if I'm shooting down the line here, I got great light here. As they move into the shaded area, the shutter speed is going to change to 2,000 fast enough shutter speed to freeze them, right? And then I'm good on my exposure. But I got a nice clean looking image here, and I got a nice clean looking image here in the shaded area. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And your thought process there, I mean, you're having to do that almost instantly, aren't you? Because as well as doing all that, you've still got the play clock clicking down. Everybody's sitting up. You've got the busy sidelines around you. You're trying not to obviously get in other people's way. There's still a game going on. And you're having to have that kind of that thought process there. Has that just kind of come from time and knowledge and just doing lots of it?
Right. Because there was one time when we played in Indianapolis one time, and they opened the dome in Indianapolis, right? Then the field was split, like from the 50 to the end zone was in the shade. And then from the 50 back here was in the sun. And this was early in my career. And it's like, man, this is tough. So what I learned how to do is just shoot whatever was in the sunny side from where I could be on the field. And then when I went to the shady side, shoot whatever's in the shady side. I couldn't shoot where it was mixed to a certain degree, right? And so I tell my assistants, right? Remember I told you if I move to one side of the field and then you have to move over to the other side. So say if I move you to the shady side, right? Well, your job now is just to cover that zone in the shade area, right? And try not to shoot it where it's backlit where the sunny side is, right? So if it comes to the corner of the end zone, your job is get that corner, because now if I'm over here, I can't get that corner. So my job is to shoot more of the field, right? And your job is to shoot this much of the field, right? And if you stay to where you're at, now, if you try to shoot in the middle, the image is going to be, because you're right at that edge of the sun in the shade, right? Because I have that middle part of the field from where I'm at. So it's a whole strategy of the way I think, right? And what I try to get and what I try to do. Yeah.
And do you have like kind of a set tactics for the game, like for you and your photography team? Is there a set routine that you're doing, or is a lot of it done on the fly depending on the ebb and flow of the game?
Well, it's kind of set, but then it's ebb and flow too as well. I mean, it's like they kind of know we've been together for a long time, right? So they kind of know what's what, and I still kind of direct them a little bit as well, right? Some of my photographers have been with me for a long time, 14, 15 years, and they at Candlestick, they stood by my side for almost 2 years, learning what I do and following me, holding gear, listen to what I'm saying, understanding my method on how I shoot. And then I sent them off to go shoot after a while, right? And I got another assistant to help me carry the gear. But what I used to do, and photographers used to look at me and like, what is he doing, right? Because the thing was, if they were over on one side and another person over here, their job was to always look at me at some point, and then I would direct them to go somewhere else, right? I would point, and I would point to another spot, and then they would move right here, right? And that's how they learned how to move. So when they shoot with me, we're always in sync with what we do. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you see your role then as a mentor to younger photographers? And I mean, for example, right now you're doing this so that younger photographers and students where I work can go, oh, I'm going to remember that little bit of what he said, and how do you feel about the role that you are now a mentor and a role model for all these people coming into photography, especially the ones you're working with? Is that a role that you ever thought that you would do, and is there anything you're doing differently now because you are in that position of helping younger photographers out?
Yeah, I mean, I say all the above because like in my younger days, somebody mentored me. Like I say, remember I told you I became a professional bowler. Someone took me by my arm and taught me how to bowl after that. But my skills was, they saw that I was going to be pretty good, and they mentored me during that time, right? And then when I started photography and then got into weddings and portraits, and I joined that photography group, they started mentoring me, right? And then I started going to conventions, right? And I used to sit there and watch these speakers, wedding photographers, portrait photographers, and people would say, well, they're not going to give up all of their secrets, right? I said, secrets? What do you mean secrets? So the thing is, it's like, I want to know what film you're using, what lens you were using, what aperture and f-stop you were using to shoot that picture. What was the lighting? And they would just show pictures, right? Where, a fabulous wedding here and, down the bricks of Italy or whatever. And it was like, but they're not giving me any substantial information, right? So then later on, somebody said, Terrell, why don't you start speaking? I said, what? Speaking about what? They said, well, why don't you talk about, and this early on, about what you do with the Niners and how you got started there. And then that's where I became a speaker in the industry. And then it was like, now I'm starting to give back and give to people what I wanted to learn was these little tidbits of knowledge to say, oh, I never thought about that. Maybe I need to go do this, or maybe I'll try this film, or, oh, he does this with a digital camera. And here's how his thought process here on the field when, like you may have some students that shoot, soccer, and they say, well, I remember Terrell told me like half the field is in shade, the other one is in the sun. I'm going to try to move over to the sunny side and shoot from here and meet her over here. And then that's where, because they probably never thought about it. Mm-hmm. So, and then now, being here so long and doing what I'm doing, and my crew, people that I brought in, I'm mentoring some students over at San Jose State, some young photographers over there. It's like, I think it's my time to give back to just help people, give them a little knowledge of what I've learned and techniques, because it's like, I don't say that I know everything. I'd say, this is how I do things. Here's what, try it, see if you like it, and go along with, and then say, oh, shoot, I like what he has here. And then add to that in what you're doing. So, I mean, mentoring is a big thing to me, and giving people opportunities, because I've gotten opportunities. So I love to share knowledge or put something in somebody's head to say, I like what he said there. And then inspire. I didn't know I was inspirational until somebody told me, right? I'm at a convention in Las Vegas, and I did a platform, and a young lady came up to me on the trade show floor and said, oh, hey, Terrell, I want to introduce myself. I'm sorry I missed your program. It's like, I'm kicking myself this and that. I've been hearing great things about it. They said you were so inspirational. And I'm like, wow, I'm inspirational. I mean, I gave a program, but I think it's my passion. And yeah. if you're listening to what I'm saying, that I'm presenting up there in the presentation, and you could tell by my expression on that, how I love to do and what I love to do. And they'll say, man, I was inspired by his path and what he's done. Yeah.
And that's really kind of you to give back, because it's not something you can really teach people or tell people to do. It either happens or it doesn't. From what I found anyway, people either naturally want to do it, and it's really obvious for those people who naturally want to give back and help. Right. And you're doing that, and that's really appreciated, no doubt, by many, many people, me included, by the fact that you're doing this today. You're obviously a professional, but have you ever let your professionalism slip at any point during a big game? So big moments, playoff games, or big events, or, for example, the end of the Super Bowl with 3 straight plays. Has your professionalism ever slipped just a little bit, or have you always been, I'm in the zone?
No, I mean, you get caught up in the game. You get, people say, Terrell, why do you get so upset after a game, after a loss, right? Because we lost. it's like, yeah. But then somebody will say, well, but you're not playing the game. You're not hitting anybody. It's like, what you don't understand is, I'm with this organization like full time every day. I'm I'm tight with the coaches, with the ownership, some of the players. I mean, and it's like, yeah, I don't have to hit anybody, but I know what they're feeling, and I want to win just like the rest of them, right? So you carry that with you, right? There were times when we had some bad lean years, and my emotions wasn't the best all the time, and I had to, like I say, I had to catch yourself. So yeah, it's happened, right? I don't want to get into all the stories of what happened, but it was like, it's just, it's like, I told myself, I said, I gotta always stay calm after a game or walking off the field, or there's people that yell at you, they yell obscenities at you when you're traveling on the road, and you have to hold your emotions in check, right? And sometimes you lose it, right? And sometimes you got to say, "Ooh, I better watch that. I still want to work with this team, because I got to stop doing, saying certain things back or something like that." But yeah, so you have. But I think as I become a veteran now, I've learned how to deal with if they're yelling at you. There's one time the Raiders, right? You see Raiders games and they call the black hole and this and that, right? And we played over there one year, right? And the end zones are tight when you're kneeling down the end zone, right? So there was a guy, he was yelling at me. He was yelling, he was going. And I told my assistant I was carrying the gear, I said, don't look back, right? I said, because it's like, if they think you can't hear them, they know they can hear you, you can hear them. But if you think they can't hear you, eventually they'll leave you alone, right? So he kept yelling, he was, get that camera out of here, get that, and then he, obscenities and so on.
A few different words in there, yeah, that's true.
Right, yeah. and then he paused, and then he said, but that's a nice camera though, right? Like that. And I turned around and we started laughing, right? And then it was like we laughed, and then he left me alone after we started laughing. And I said, man, that was a good one, this and that. It's like, and then he never said anything to me again. I mean,
You must have been the only person in history to wear red and make a friend in the black hole.
Right.
It must be just you. But, that's a small hall of fame right there. But
I think there's certain times when you meet somebody and they look at you like, that guy's a pretty cool guy. I like his smile, this and that. But then there's one time in San Diego, there was one guy that was saying some things. He had his kid there, and it was like, what he was saying was like, I said, dude, man, there's kids in the stands. How can you call me that and say that? And he says, well, my kid has to learn somehow. And after that, I'm like, okay, I just got to walk away from there. You get one extreme to the next, but yeah. But I try to stay really, truly professional most of the time.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Obviously, in terms of professionalism, COVID has changed a lot of the way we all work, obviously for yourself as a sports photographer, you've lost that feel and the fandom in the stands and things. Have you felt massively affected by it in terms of your work kind of on the field, or has it been almost business as usual as you've gone through this last season, being affected by COVID and whatever's going to happen in this one?
Well, no, it's been definitely different. Because, the numbers were like what we could have on the field, or, we got to, when you think about with photography, video, social media, and the league limits how many people you can have on the field, or in certain groups if you're not in a certain tier group, and they try to keep the numbers down. It became tough, right? And so so I was still fortunate to be on the field 80% of the time at the game. Sometimes I did have to go in the stands and shoot because we rotated a couple things out, but I did all the road games on the field. But it was real strange the first game of the year when there was no fans in the stands. It was like they're trying to pump in crowd noise, but there was no energy in the stands that you thrive off of, the players feed off of, you feel it or something like that. And it was like, you got used to it after the season went on, but it was like tough. But then, you got the, make sure you stand safe and getting tested every day. Traveling, can't literally leave the hotel, when we're on the road.
Yeah, it's affected my work, it's affected your work, and
yes.
Good grief, I'll keep everything crossed, but we are right. Getting back to some people shouting at you in the stands and hopefully not calling your names and things, but certainly.
Yeah, they did. It was crazy, but it's all good.
Yeah. And so as we go, I'll squeeze in two more questions here. Then I noticed on your Instagram you've been doing a digital evolution kind of system where you're looking at all your old cameras and what you're going through. And there was one photo I think you posted of a 2 megapixel photo back in the mid-90s. And obviously now, we're getting 50 megapixels on a phone. Right. What do you feel is coming next for photography? Is there still a need for these professional photographers? We've got so much access. Everybody's a photographer nowadays. What's next for photography and some of these younger people who you're mentoring, who are going to spend the next 20, 30 years working in the business?
It's interesting. I just don't know. Technology has moved so quickly since I bought that digital camera in 1996 for $12,000, 2 megapixels, state of the art, because it was like just to be able to see an image when you've been shooting film for so long, and how do you create a good image out of that 2 megapixel file, right? But that's what got me in the door with 49ers, really got me over the edge in the door, right? And then I've always been, like I say, on the edge of technology. Anything new that came out, I was getting, right? I think I've had every iPhone that Apple came out with, upgrade, okay, I'm gonna buy an upgrade, right? But as you see it, it's going rapidly, right? So now you're into the mirrorless cameras, right? And, with that technology, it's just starting to evolve. Now you got more and more photographers out there that's shooting and getting very creative, right? And so, and very good in what they do, and probably even your students as well, right? And it's like, you know, if they have a love for photography and they want to take it further, it's like, how do they compete in this market of hundreds of thousands of photographers trying to vie for the same thing, which is kind of hard. I mean, I don't know where it's going to go, but it's definitely going to be competitive, right? And it's like, but how do you, you know, distinguish yourself from the next person, right? And I still think if you got 10 people here and we're all doing the same thing, right? How do you stand out, right? How do you stand out amongst the rest of them, right? Is it your work? Yeah, and everybody's got equal amount of work, right? I'm a still strong believer in personality. Remember, we go back to that when I say, you know, when, you know, the guy said, you know, you come in and you speak to people, you're pleasant, you say hello. And that's how I got, you know, I still think personality comes a lot into play in it, right? But as far as like, you know, I think we will transition more into mirrorless and away from the SLR cameras, right?
Yeah.
I think it's just going to grow and grow and grow. I mean, you look at like, you know, there's, you know, with Canon, you got the R5 and the 45 megapixel sensor. And then, you know, I just think it's going to get, you know, the 50 to 60 to 80. The resolution is just going to be phenomenal where, you know, you're going to be able to like shoot an image and then crop in on your eye and you still have great resolution, right?
Yeah.
You know, one thing that scares me too is about like video. You know, you got 8K video, right? So you go from 2K, 4K, 8K, you know, then it's going to be like, then it's going to double, then it's going to go like to 12K or 16K, right? Yeah. And then, you know, people used to tell me like, man, pretty soon, and you can do it now with 8K, is pull stills off of video, right? You know, so it's kind of like, well, how big is that still? So that kind of worries me a little bit too, as well. And like you said earlier, where, you know, there's a lot of ways to get images now, right? And source images.
You still got to have that creative kind of zone behind the camera, haven't you? So let me just check my internet here 1 second, Terrell. Hold on.
Right.
There we go. I've still got you.
Yeah,
Bear with me. There we go.
No, you're good.
Hey, we've been doing well here. We've been doing 51 minutes without any kind of breakups there, but no, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Let me just throw one more question at you, and I think I might know the answer to this anyway, but I'd like to ask you so that our students can really get the feel as we kind of finish up here. If you could go back to when you were 17, 18 years old, the same age as the students I teach, and give yourself or somebody had given you a piece of advice that you really wish you'd kind of took on board, listened to, and almost became a bit of a mantra for you, what would that advice be to your 17, 18-year-old self?
Oh man, I mean, it was like, you know, that's a tough one because I've always been around good people, right? I mean, I grew up without my father, so I really didn't have a father figure. My mother raised me and my sister, right? I never got in trouble or anything like that. You know, never, you know, did anything, you know, drugs or this and that, so on and so forth. You know, I mean, but as a kid, you know, sometimes when, you know, I got into high school, I just like, well, you know, hey, I'm not gonna go to class here and there, right? You know, and missed part of the semester because just I wasn't getting in trouble, wasn't doing anything, right? And you know, there was one guy, I was working in a bowling alley. There was one guy that kind of told me, he says, look, you better start going to class. You better start going to school, right? You know, if you want to do something in life, you know, you got to make sure you finish school. You got to do this, that. So, I mean, just kind of took me under my arm where like, you know, it's like, and just kind of set me kind of straight a little bit, even though I wasn't getting in trouble. And I took those and to heart. And, you know, I finished on time and so on and so forth. And I had to catch up and stuff like that. And then, you know, I stopped running with the people that weren't doing anything that wasn't being progressive. You know, I surrounded myself with people that are positive, that had aspirations and goals in life, you know. And so I think, you know, he kind of set me straight a little bit. And then people just started, like talking about earlier, took me by the arm to teach me, to help me, to train me. To, you know, I came off a tour and got that job in this data center and I knew nothing and they trained me. So I think that's why I feel big on mentorship and giving back and teaching and it's like speaking to young kids and following, you know, when I got on the field, I said, man, it'd be great to get with the 49ers, right? That was a dream, didn't know, right? And look at where I'm at, right? So I tell young kids, college kids, high school kids, think about what you want to do. You may not know now, right? It's like a blank canvas when you know, put your goal up, write your goal down. People say, yeah, write your goal down, this and that. Now, you look at it and you say, how am I going to achieve that goal? You don't know, right? But yet, it's the start of your roadmap, right? I say, meet as many people as you can, surround yourself with good people, right? And even the people that's in the industry in photography, even where you're at on Linden, stuff like that, people that's doing things like how I'm doing, and hopefully they take you under their wing, or carry some gear, or be an editor, things like that. You got to start somewhere, because what happens is you got to do the little things to get to the bigger pot, right? The more the little things you do, and people see your personality, how you work hard, this and that, then you start getting those opportunities. So I think, I think I've been pretty blessed and fortunate, because I, just been around good people. So it's like, and you just take tidbits of and watch what other people are doing and how they're reacting. I mean, I remember, I like to dress a lot nice. And I remember there's one guy that used to, come to bowling alley bowl, and his name was Danny. He used to dress nice all the time. Right. And I said, Danny, where do you get your clothes at? What do you do? He says, and then Danny took me shopping to show me, where he got his clothes and this and that. And it's like, well, now I got a habit of shopping and so on and so forth. So things like that. I mean, it's just surround yourself by good people, and go forward from there.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And I love the little things that lead to bigger things. It's long career journeys that we're all on, no matter where we're at. Our career journeys are long, long roads, and they're not all achieved in one fell swoop, are they? In fact, I don't think any of them are. So it is important to keep things in perspective, isn't it? And roll with those little things and use them as much as you can, and get the most out of people who are willing to help you.
Now, before COVID and the pandemic and stuff, it was like, I always thought about, like, man, because, we've been to London. We played a few games in London before, right? And then my wife used to travel to London a lot for work, right? So I always loved coming out there with her too as well. And then it was like, it's like, man, it would be great, because I shot those international soccer matches out here. I said, man, it'd be great to shoot a soccer game in London somewhere, and just with the crowd, because you guys have those stadiums that are filled and just rocking. It's like, I love that energy of like that. So it's like, maybe one of these days, once we can get back to some type of normal.
Certainly. Well, let me know when you come over here, and I'll. I don't have any contacts or anything, but I'll wave at you from the stands or something. That's the least I can do. That's absolutely brilliant. That you've still got goals, even after everything you've done. You're still thinking, yeah, but I really want to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Well, I want to say thanks for having me. I really appreciate
thank you
looking me up and being a 49er fan and following me, and like you say, some of your students know, I guess kind of know about me or something like that, and that's interesting. So it's kind of like, but tell me before we finish though, tell me a little bit something about your students. What is it that
So, our students, we are 16 to 19-year-olds. We're in Birmingham, and essentially, our students choose a variety of subjects, 3 or 4 different subjects. So I guess that would be the latter end of high school for yourself in terms of those age ranges. And I teach business studies. One of my great colleagues, Laura, teaches photography, and we're always kind of discussing ideas of like little projects we've got, and anybody we know that we think can help each other. So our photography students learn some of the traditional basic. I say basic, it's actually more complicated than digital. The traditional, we used to have the dark room, and they were able to use that. And then they look at a variety of photographic projects, and we've got these amazing corridors just lined with this student work that is creative and inventive, and it draws on their cultures, their local experiences, and they're drawing on all of that to create their work. And it's fascinating to see, because even though I'm in the building with them, their cultures and backgrounds are very, very different to mine. So what they're bringing to their work are things that, even as somebody who's taken a lot of photos in his life, it's like, I would never have seen it like that. And to see this, I guess, I don't want to say new generation, because after I've been there for 11 years, I guess there's technically been 11 new generations, but certainly this new kind of feel for photography and what they're trying to represent. These students who are just surrounded by it, they've got their phones, they can do anything they like. And the creativity that comes from some of them is just astounding. It's
Do they do
absolutely
any sports photography themselves, or
Yeah, I think because we are close to a cricket ground, a very famous cricket ground, Edgbaston Cricket Ground. We've got a lot of local football teams. I think, obviously, much like yourselves, COVID put a stop to a lot of being able to do that as organised team sports stopped. But as we get back into it, and our sports department, again, they start playing games. So we have like basketball teams, cricket teams, table tennis is very popular where we are. So as we get back into that, there'll be links between our photography students, our sports students. We'll look at the marketing side as well with some of our students. So we'll really tie it all in and fingers crossed, get out there shooting.
I mean, I would love to come out there one day and just meet students, do a class or something like that if we ever get back to normal.
Yeah, well, you're very welcome.
And say, hey, I got this idea. We'll go out to the London area and teach a sports class out there.
Yeah.
Will you sponsor me to go back? Because I think they would like it too, though. So it's like,
yeah. I mean, you're welcome anytime. We're always looking for fun projects and things to do, and links up with other organisations. Anything that our students can get that is outside the textbook and outside the classroom is just the best. It really is the best. And the more the merrier, and any help that you want to give, just like this, is just it's stunning. So. I mean, thank you so much. Thank you. So what I'll do, Terrell, is I'll say cheerio on here. I'll stop the recording. Stay on for a few seconds if you would, and then we'll just say a proper goodbye on there. But thank you for asking me questions as well. That's a first. I love it. And thanks for your honesty. Really, really do appreciate your honesty and chatting with me today. I really appreciate it. And we'll no doubt see you again sometime by the sounds of it.
Well, the smile on my face is like that all the time. Every time I pull up to the stadium and pull in here, it's kind of like, I can't believe that I'm able to do what I love to do.
Yeah, brilliant. Still pinching yourself. I love it. Absolutely fantastic. So cool. All right. Well, let's say an official goodbye on the recording, and then we'll say another goodbye afterwards. But Terrell, thank you so much. And thanks for talking business with me here today.
All right. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Terrell, for taking the time out of your ridiculously busy schedule to chat football and photography with me here on Talking Business with Danny Pardo. Absolutely amazing insights. And go Niners! And I suppose I better finish off a bit more seriously and say thank you to everybody watching and listening. Really appreciate you liking, sharing, subscribing, rating, reviewing, and doing all those good things. And if you want to say hi on social media, please feel free to do so at Pardo's Business. Just have a search for that and you'll find me. And until next time, thank you very much and a cheerio.